Well, hi there. You're watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken, a weekly podcast where we try to make Canadian news and politics funner.
The most fun. And my name's Steve Boots.
Oh, yeah. My name's Brittlestar. I forgot that part, too. I was just so focused on the F word.
This is our first kick at the can.
Sorry, my name's Brittlestar. There we go.
Steve.
I'm Steve Boots.
I'm Lisa, and we make it the funterest. And if you know, you know.
Oh, God. It's already
Open
started
and hot.
filthy. Open and hot and sweaty. Nope, I take that back.
Like,
I
you
don't
had
wanna
to
say
take one
that.
extra notch, didn't you?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
We are talking about serious things today.
I like,
Exactly.
I like the silence that it filled the space right after that, too.
Never
Both of us
forget.
Well, we're giving everyone at home a moment to catch up and go, what are they for? Oh, God, that's what they're referring to.
What?
So you guys are well. I was in St. John's recently. I had a great trip. Shannon and I were out there, did some picture taking, and not just of like boudoir stuff for me and Shannon.
I mean,
because we'll do that
too,
anywhere.
obviously.
We don't have to travel to do that. We can do that anywhere. No, but did some stuff for our merch site and stuff like that, which was great. And then I got to have dinner with the amazing Mark Critch and his wife Melissa, and David Cochran, host of Power and Politics. Isn't that fun?
Oh, look
That
at
is
you.
fun.
Yeah,
He's
it was
been
good.
doing a great job on
Connections.
Power and Politics.
He's a super nice guy. That was the first time I'd met him in person. And what's hilarious is that, well, it's not that hilarious, but Mark's wife, Melissa, is the deputy chief of staff for Premier Fury in Newfoundland.
Oh.
And so Melissa and David, she would say things and he'd fact check her like at the dinner table. Be like, nope, that's like this and it's like that. And she'd have to be like, no, you're thinking about this time and this. Oh, right. Okay. But what if that other time was different? It was fascinating. It was amazing. I like hanging out with people that are smarter than me, which is why I hang out with you guys. Because I think it's challenging for me. And it makes it easier to be funny because I'm just acting normal, but I just look like an idiot. like I'm being an intentional idiot, which is good.
It works.
No, you're the heart and soul of the operation, though.
Well, I didn't want to state it, but I was kind of fishing for someone to state it. And thank you, Steve. I
You
appreciate
bring
that.
plucky sidekick energy.
That's what Shannon says. That's exactly what Shannon says. You're both well. You both had good weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good weeks.
Yeah, it's been good. We had like a belated Mother's Day gathering with my wife's whole family, and I know they listen, so I'll say hi to them.
Oh, hi.
Hi,
Your wife's
fam.
family listen?
They
And I make all those jokes about the Batmobile?
Oh, they are aware. They think it's funny.
Okay, good.
You're
What toys did you get this visit?
The worst part is we did get toys. This time it's different. We got old baby toys because my sister just had twins.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Aw,
different. That's different.
Sweet.
And so
That's
we got
very
to hold the
nice.
little twins, and they're all adorable and like the sweetest things in the universe. And
Oh, that's lovely.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
that's so sweet.
they're
And,
I
the-
I gardened this week. That's what I did.
Because the weather's been pretty decent where you guys are as well, hasn't it been? Pretty decent?
No, it was nice a few days ago, and then it's been raining and windy as all hell today, which is surprising because I didn't think we had wind in Alberta, according to Danielle Smith. But anyway, yeah, no, but it's been nice. We're easing into summer, which is good.
That's good. It was
just
coming
dipping our
back.
toes.
Just dip
Exactly.
our toes,
Coming
see if
back
we
from
like it.
St. John's was the first time ever that I think I've flown somewhere and returned to home where it was warmer than where I had left. I think actually that's not true. No, it was pretty much the same temperature when we left Whitehorse a couple of years ago. But we flew back from St. John's. And St. John's, we woke up Thursday. We arrived in St. John's in the evening, and everyone we arrived was like, "Oh God, it's been an amazing day. It's been so beautiful today. It's been sunny. It's been clear. It's been 22 degrees. It's fantastic weather. You couldn't have picked a better time to visit." The next day was 9 degrees and foggy. You couldn't see anything. And then it somehow got progressively foggier, unknown to science. I don't know how that happened, but it got foggier and foggier to the point where we were sitting in the exit row flying home. And I had a great time. The weather didn't stop us. We had a fantastic time. It was beautiful. We walked up Signal Hill. Went to Cape Spear, the most easterly point in Canada. It was really, really great. Couldn't see a damn thing, but it was fantastic. And that's usually going to describe a lot of things for me. And we were flying home, and it was so foggy the entire trip we were there that the flight attendant who was sitting we were in the emergency row. There was a flight attendant sitting in her little, backwards facing seat by the door. And she says to us as we landed in Toronto, she looked out the window and she went, I can see a horizon again. Because there was so much fog. There was nothing. You couldn't tell. That was the problem with all the fog, is you couldn't tell. There was no visual cues for depth or distance or scale. It was impossible to tell how far away things were and how close they were. We were walking up Signal Hill and got to a part where there's a thing called Dead Man's Pond. And
sounds delightful.
It's quite something. They used to put the people in those metal cages type of thing, and then they'd open them up once they were dead, and their bodies would roll down and into Dead Man's Pond. As you're passing by in the fog, I was looking at it going, God, that must be 400 feet, 500 feet down. That's crazy. Oh my God, look at the size of that duck. Oh no, it's right here. It's right in front of us. I had no idea how far away it was.
They have giant ducks.
Do you think that's just your lack of experience with fog? Because when I was growing up, I went to the Maritimes, and the thing that I noticed with the people who live there are, number one, completely unaffected by fog, and number two, completely unaffected by the absolutely horrifying stories they tell about the place where they live. Yeah. 3 bazillion people died at this place. Yeah. And they kind of shrug it off because they walk past it on their way to work.
Yeah.
Every day for
it's
them,
amazing.
Right? Yeah.
It's a phenomenal place. I highly encourage anyone who hasn't been to go visit Newfoundland. It was amazing. We're going to go back, and we're going to have a car this time when we go back so we can drive around a bit more. And probably not go back in January. We're going to go back in August.
Maybe don't drive in the fog.
Yeah.
That whole depth thing.
No, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so we got big things to talk about this week. There's some interesting stuff that's happened, and the most notable interesting thing has been the story about election interference from foreign entities. Can I call them entities? Sure.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's oddly
entities?
hazy. Foreign influences. Foreign.
They call them actors, don't they?
Yeah.
I think
they
thespians is the proper
actors.
term. Threat actors.
Yeah, it's very strange. And I actually have the report here.
It's
please. Published on the NSICOP's page.
Yeah, this is what it looks like. It's just black. There's nothing. There's no.
It's all redacted.
It's just all redacted, just chunks.
Right.
So are we doing NSICOP? Is because to me it sounds like an NBC show, NSICOP.
NSICOP SUV or something. That'd be the truck they use to get the foreign actors from one place to another.
They anchor it with a retired rapper.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we say
probably Chocolare?
Are we saying
God, I love Chocolare. I
want some Cardinal Official.
It was either that or Maestro Fresh West.
What I can buy what I want, what I can get what I want. Sorry.
Are we using the letters, or is it
I think we should
NSICOP.
We should be forced to say it differently every single time.
Okay.
I agree. Like that.
I agree. We'll go for variety.
Okay. Excellent.
So
please
it
enlighten
doesn't
us.
really name the different countries specifically, but there's a very odd thing here. I'm going to name pages if somebody's following along. On page 13 of this, they say that there was influences from the PRC, which is China, India, blank, Iran, blank, and blank.
Blank.
So
why would they blank out some of the countries?
Why would they blank out 3 of the countries that are involved in this?
Are they countries in conflict right now?
Isn't that a question?
Is it because they're what's the word I'm thinking
good,
of?
buddy?
I'm trying to think of the word.
His back's acting up again.
I think he just blew a tire.
The leaves kicked in. Is it because that they are too controversial? Of that's the word. I was going to say confrontational, but controversial.
Well,
meaning is it Israel?
So,
is it United States? Do you know what I mean?
I have. I'm not even really willing to speculate because it's really, really, really carefully blocked out. And so I have a suspicion why this whole thing is so hazy is rooted in that. So Poilievre and a couple of other folks in the Conservative caucus don't have their security clearance with the NSICOP, the NSICOP, to see the full unredacted report. Because if they saw the full and it's not, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about why he doesn't do it. The reality is because he wants to be able to shoot from the hip and say whatever he wants without the responsibility that comes with the clearance. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, he can't get it. He's had it in the past. So, But a huge chunk of this report is redacted, and like very significant portions of context around the stuff that people are freaking out about. And so a lot of why that stuff doesn't get shared is because it implicates like currently ongoing investigations. So if those details got out, it could potentially mess up something that's ongoing to try to catch bigger fish.
Right.
So do you think that might be why they're doing things like holding back the names of the MPs who were implicated in this?
I mean, I'm curious. I'm going to say there's probably MPs on multiple sides that would be involved in this, right? And so I think it's a no.
Well, this is where it gets interesting. Is at present, the Conservatives have now called for the MPs to be outed.
The Conservatives have or have not?
Have.
They just did.
Yeah.
Oh, they just did.
They just did.
Calling for it. So,
but they have
the Liberals are dragging their feet on this, but that's partly because I think like they've got international relations stuff to manage here. Right?
Yeah, it's not just national politics to them.
And I'm not even 100% sure if it's their call. Like, does the NSI decide who finds this out? Or does the government have that power?
I would have to look that up. I think the government has the power. But I think you're right. If there's other stuff going on and it impacts that could be why. But the Conservatives have to call it out. They have to make the claim, right? Or else they look like they're part of the problem.
Well, exactly. I want to find out because I wasn't aware of the calling out. And I know it's Sunday and I should have been aware of it by now.
Oh, right. Because it happened so long ago.
Said that, where is it here? It's a statement that he put out.
On social or elsewhere?
No, during question period, sorry. The National Security Committee indicates that there are members of this House who have knowingly worked for foreign hostile governments. Canadians have a right to know who and what is the information. Who are they? So he asked that question during question period. But Dominic LeBlanc, who's the minister who's responsible for this, is saying basically that there's a lot of context that clarifies why the committee's hands are tied.
Do we get to know the context?
Well, but this is the problem, is they're hiding behind the secure nature of this information.
Sure.
But they're also kind of the ones who decide we don't need to know it. So, right.
Is the Conservative mood, because initially my thought was the Liberals are being cagey about it because they stand more to gain than to lose from this information. So it's kind of a keeping their powder dry as long as they can. Mm-hmm. I might not have changed my opinion on that because I think that Poilievre's no dummy. He's a smart dude. And he could be, asking these questions with fully knowing he'll never get an answer. He's not going to get an answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he 100%. Like when he asks that question in QP, he knows that the prime minister is not going to give him a straight answer because he's not able to in that space.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how, like, I feel like the only answer here is for all of the parties to come together at a joint statement and say, NSICOP really, or sorry, NSICOP. I'm putting
we're just going to have him say it all the time.
Places, and it's really hard now. Like, I think all parties come together because at the end of the day, the NSICOP is the one who makes the decision. Is my understanding.
Yeah.
So if all of Parliament stands up and unanimously says, we want this out, in all likelihood, they're going to release it. So the real question
But
is,
there's
why
still
is any party dragging their feet? Who are they covering for?
But do they know who they're covering for? Because Blanchette came out and said, if anybody from the bloc is listed, then they will be
Turfed.
right. And so, I mean, he's got to put that blanket on it, right? Because would you know? Would the leaders know?
But this is
You
what
wouldn't
I'm saying.
necessarily know.
If you genuinely believe that your party is clean, why are you not calling and screaming for this to be released? Like it feels like a pretty significant threat to our political system. Like,
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
like
for sure it is.
I've got the quote here. It's just straight up. Some elected officials, however, began wittingly assisting foreign state actors soon after their election. And then three sentences were deleted to remove injurious or privileged information. Because of course. But like, they knew what they were doing. They were actively working with foreign state actors. Like,
And not just in a nice little, hey, I'll take an email, a phone call, and a sweatshirt. It's nothing like that. It sounded like it was much more nefarious.
yeah.
And listen, I'll do a lot of things for a sweatshirt. It's more a case of they were willing to make their position transactional. They're like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Straight up, there's one section here that talks about how China was straight up seeking quid pro quo relationships with certain members to mobilize its network in that member's favor. Like they were straight up just exchanging, political influence
Goodies.
for support.
Now, wasn't the main focus of this, and I'll use my position as entertaining curious idiot, wasn't the main focus of the report that it was to do with the conservative leadership race? Essentially, that was the main focus.
I think that was a
Correct.
consequence, but that was a consequence of this because this whole thing came out of all the allegations against the liberals, right? And that's why this whole
and this
committee
is
was
the issue.
started.
When you say it happens around the leadership race, does that mean the start of, like, that's kind of what the report points at, but does that mean the origin of the race? Like why there was a race at all? I don't know. Because it's like, this just feels incredibly damning.
It does. And I think that what really surprised me the most was the fact that it wasn't jumped upon and weaponized immediately by opposition.
Yesterday, Poilievre didn't ask a single question about it. He only finally worked up the gumption today, which
That
But
strikes
there's-
me as
Sunday.
someone who is figuring out how all the angles are first. He's being smart, figuring out what all the angles are first for him to do, because he knows he has to say something, otherwise it looks really horrible. But he also knows where to ask it. Like, where is that question period? Like, that's not I mean, I don't know what the benefits are of him doing a question period, to be honest. That's where it's going to have the most damage, I would think. But I don't know.
Because like Stu said, he can ask the question and make the demands of the the liberals, knowing full well that it's like they're not going to give it, but it makes it look like he's standing up and he's saying, we need to know, when chances are there's probably some fingers in the pot on his side as well. I mean, they came out and said that until this report was released, that the CPC had nothing. They had no idea that there was any allegation of interference in the leadership race.
Right.
So, okay.
It's tough, right? Because like everybody's hiding behind official statements and redacted documents,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so it's very difficult because it really feels like it's much more about political establishment than it is about any individual party. You know what I mean? Like it really feels like a deep rot within our politics rather than just a single party that has.
Except for when I think of things like wasn't there a whole thing with Patrick Brown, who was running for leadership and then ended up being accused of stuff, and then it found out that he was actually not really guilty of that stuff, but he was given the boot before it got to that point. Yeah.
Yeah, that Patrick Brown, like his history with Pierre Poilievre is wild. They go back to like college hating one another.
Right.
And so whenever anything dubious happens between either of the two of them, I always look at it with an enormous amount of skepticism.
Yeah. And I think that there's no one really firmly on Patrick Brown's team necessarily, based on other, stuff that he's been doing, accused of doing or whatever, involved with, exactly, or attached to, we'll say. But I mean, it's because that was all about money as well. That was about money being paid off and stuff, and then having investigations happen that were paid for by somebody.
Well,
and it all seemed to be nefarious.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Weren't there allegations of memberships being bought with, like visas, or not visas, like credit cards? I don't know what the credit cards were, but prepaid credit cards or something.
Prepaid credit cards. But the CPC made a point of saying that in their little put out that they did, that memberships to their parties were done either by check or credit cards, like nothing prepaid, nothing illicit that would, be out into the world of unknown persons. So to say that explicitly,
Does that make you suspicious? Does that make you suspicious?
Look, I think at the end of the day, any person has a potential to be swayed by large sums of money.
Sure.
Or promises
You're looking at them.
Right? Any nefarious actors listening, get in touch.
Exactly. Get in touch.
Brittlestar is
numbers.
indeed for sale.
Right? Exactly. He'll take prepaid
bargain price too.
Just ask any anti-vaxxer. They'll tell you.
But so I think I'm going to say there's probably people involved in every party that may be subject to this, because if that is the intent of these organizations, these people, these countries, they're going to know who to go to, right? It's like, it's like go to my Italian roots. It's like the mafioso thing, like the weakest link, right? And so that's the link you're going to go to, and you're going to work it and try and get it. So I think if people swayed anyway, I think it's going to come out that there are people in every party that maybe did some things.
I think so too. And I think it's also, it seems to me, just the general temperature is that the public is kind of like, if there are people, regardless of whose party they're on, they got to go. Yeah, they got to go.
Absolutely.
I think certainly for me, it was a case of I kept looking up, going like, what's the Chong guy? What's he? He's conservative, but he's also already spoken up against this before. So it's like, I don't care who it is, just like, liberal, conservative, NDP, whatever block. It's like, if you're doing this kind of stuff, I think generally people are like, nah, that's not cool. That's just too blatant.
Chong's an interesting name because he comes up in the report a few times, but it's generally exculpatory. Like when he comes up, it's like, we looked into it and nothing came out, because he's named. He's not blacked out.
Yeah.
And what's said about him is not damning at all.
Yeah.
Well, if it was, he'd be blacked out. I mean, that's the whole purpose of that redaction.
I mostly want to highlight it because he's been the subject of a lot of Twitter speculation, and it looks very, very doubtful that it is him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that, again, the fact that this came out and everyone, the general temperature, like I said, was that people were just keen to find out who it was because they didn't really care which party it was. It was just very bad for the country. And it seems like delaying the response, having a whole day of this in the news cycle, prominent in the news cycle, not saying anything, to me just seems very careful. It seems very studied and very, I'm not trying not to be too conspiratorial, but at the same time, totally conspiratorial.
But they have to. Weird. This is impactful to international relations potentially, right? And so, and depending on what's going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, the involvement of whatever MP is doing whatever, those might be separate investigations, right? So they have to be cautious about what they release to not impact those things. So I will give them time, but at some point we better be seeing the list. And it better not be this twisted narrative of party versus party. I just, like you said, if people are doing things they shouldn't be doing, i.e. treason, then regardless of what party they're part of.
Yeah. As an example.
Just as an example.
Just spitballing here.
Right? Then we'll walk all of you, down the hill. But this is a big deal. Like Canada is kind of like, we're so innocent and this kind of makes us look like the US, and I don't like that.
Do you think a big part of the underlying issue here is that the people trying to have this conversation and make the decisions about this are people with long proven track records of lying to the public? There's no trust. And so when anybody says, well, it wasn't me. Was it? You've lied about a lot of other stuff. Right?
But that's why I think Poilievre jumping at it is him, trying to like smoke and mirrors about it, because the allegations are pointing directly to the leadership, right?
Yes. So, yes, this is the whole conspiratorial thing. I don't really want to be seen as, but at the same time, that's the thing that jumps out at me. It's like, it seems like there's so many elements to that make me feel like, okay, well, this has got to be something there. There's got to be something.
Wouldn't it be just like blissfully ironic if the push for this whole committee and this foreign interference thing was based on pressure in regards to Trudeau in 2019 and 2021, and we think there was interference, and that's how they won the election, and it turns out to be no, sucker,
not what you thought,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I've dug up the specific wording from the report here. It's foreign actors also targeted party leadership campaigns. 3 sentences were deleted to remove injurious or privileged information. The sentences describe 2 specific incidents where PRC officials allegedly interfered in the leadership races of the Conservative Party of Canada. Doesn't specify which race. Doesn't specify, because they've had 2 races in pretty recent years.
Yeah.
And then there's another, this paragraph was deleted, described India's alleged interference in the CBC leadership race. And there's also specific examples of PRC offers to support provincial politicians.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of stuff. It's bad.
And maybe that's why it's not being released, because maybe it branches out so far that there's more things that have to be looked at. We got to get our tinfoil hats, because we're not usually on this side of things, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to be so tinfoil hatty, but like, intelligence in international relations and espionage are real things. Like, they are things that happen.
Yeah.
But when people think of intelligence and espionage, they're thinking like James Bond. It's not that.
No.
It's subtle influence. It's friendly connections between somebody who just also happens to know somebody in the government, right? Like, it's so much more subtle than that. And so to see this sort of stuff happening, it's not the most unrealistic thing. Like, if you were a foreign government and you wanted to have an impact on what's happening in another country, this is a crazy cost-effective way to do it.
But that's what I mean. Like, they work their way in. It's not like some meetings behind closed doors in caves and faraway lands. Like, it is ingratiating. Well, I don't know.
What James Bond movies are you watching?
It's more Austin Powers. It's more Austin Powers.
He's known for his primitive tools.
but it's
just bronze axes and stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm not a spy. But that's how it happens, right? It's a slow and steady years of things, right? Ingratiating yourselves with people. And that's why I'm saying I don't think it would be unreasonable to think it's probably members of each party or every party. Because it happens before you even know it's happening, right? It's like, hey, can you do me this favor? It's like they tell guards in jails like not to have personal conversations with inmates because they will take that information and then eventually they'll turn it around and use it and blackmail people. That's exactly what happens in these situations, right? And so that's why I'm saying it would be so easy. And if you were not paying attention, of weaker composition and fall for that kind of stuff, like,
but it's even easier than you think. It's a friendly conversation at a party where you say something you shouldn't have said or something like that. Like, stuff gets leaked out so easily and gets, like, the walls have ears in places like Ottawa or Washington or any of those places.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's conspiratorial to say, because it's not necessarily that there's like, you know, people talking into the cuffs of their shirts. It's more like somebody who works at the embassy overhears something and shares it along. Like, it's all very real, but I think part of why so much of this is redacted is because if sources got it, like if the information got revealed, there's in many cases the source of that information would become then obvious.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so that's, I think, another risk that they're trying to be aware of, right? Like, if they have specific sources within the circle of some MP or, you know, within that circle of influence that's trying to influence those MPs, if they out the MP they're working with, then all of a sudden that whole network falls apart. I wonder if that's what they're trying to protect.
But if it was, let's say it was released today and there's 10 MPs here and there's 5 MPs here and all of them get booted, like, what does that do? What does that do to our government, right? And the instability from that has consequence. So could that be part of the reason?
Legitimacy crisis.
Yeah. That wouldn't be good.
Right?
It's tough though, right? Because like if it's federal, but like if it's federal, it sounds like it's a small handful of MPs.
Yes.
There's what, 338?
Yep.
We should really know that, but yes.
Yes, I think so.
It's about to change if it hasn't already.
It's definitely going
By Sunday?
Point is, there's a lot. And so the likely case is that it's a pretty small fraction of them. So does it completely undermine our entire government? Unlikely.
Right.
Does it potentially undermine the conservative leadership race? Yeah. And that's a huge problem for Poilievre.
That is a huge problem. I don't think what's interesting about him is that he, you know, and this was mentioned to me recently, is that he's releasing information on different platforms, meaning like not meaning Twitter to Instagram or something, but meaning like in the press, question period, social media, directly to, you know, constituents and party members and stuff. And all the messaging is tailored, which is smart. All the messaging is tailored so that he's kind of playing. No, they're being kept separate almost. They're like information silos of people. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, what stood out to me is I saw Chrystia Freeland talking about something else, budget something or whatever, mm-hmm. and financial thing anyway. And she was answering in French, and then there was at the end there was a woman who asked her a question. A reporter asked a question about the interference, foreign interference, and she wasn't. I've seen her tell a joke. She's not very good at telling jokes.
No.
As we've seen in the recent past.
So I feel that she's, you know, she's a good politician. I think she's and that she's good at it, and she's also very smart. But she didn't have any panic. There was no panic in her face at being asked the question. She was just like walked away and didn't answer it. As opposed to a little clip of a couple of this on the CBC, a couple of conservative MPs, and or at least one anyway, with someone else, and they couldn't get away fast enough. Mm-hmm. They looked terrified. I'm not saying that those guys are guilty. I'm not saying the thing that's terrible about this is that there's, you know, this foreign interference and there's this NSICOP is very spyish, but it's not. It's currying favor, as you said. It's all it is like, you know, we're going to be building on that land over there, and it'll probably have this many jobs. And if you want to help me get a lease on a Ford truck, that'd be great. It's all very boring, I think, and it's also the fact that we've been told pretty blatantly that no one's going to get in trouble for it, apart from maybe getting turfed. No one's getting arrested. No one's getting, you know, thrown out shot for treason, or nothing's like that's happening. It's just kind of nothing's going to happen at all.
I will say the question that I am left with after all of this is, or not the question, maybe the thing that I want to re-examine or look at again is the Conservative Party's reaction to the person that the Indian government killed on Canadian soil. Because they were very oddly defensive of the Indian government in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that was a big deal.
It was a huge deal.
They went after Trudeau. They said that they ruined relationships with India. Like, it was hardcore back then.
It was very strange. And now from the lens of seeing that the Indian government interfered with the conservative leadership race, it feels a lot stranger. Right? And this is I think the problem is under the lens of knowing that there's foreign interference somewhere in the conservative leadership race, but also somewhere in Canadian politics, it now casts this lens of doubt on everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
which is good for no one.
No.
And that's it. Until this gets put out and the air is cleared, this is like where things automatically wind up is everything becomes dubious. Everything becomes, who told you to say that? Right? Like,
Well, and it hasn't been good to date. And so this is just going to make it worse, right? Like there's already so much distrust and shadiness and sneakiness happening.
well,
Now we
and
have
when
to
you-
see.
And when you
Go
have
ahead.
parties taking in like absolutely indiscernible positions on things where they're just
Yes.
like what they do makes no sense at all,
Mm-hmm.
it suddenly gets a lot easier to go like, oh, right? So
Yeah.
they desperately need to clear the
Okay,
air
so
on
let's play hypothetical. And let's say that we
this.
find
This
out
will go well.
this will go great.
I can see no potential
Right?
consequences.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Everything we say from here on out is alleged and
Alleged.
not legally actionable.
No, and none of this has actually happened. I'm just
Not
curious to
legally
see how it play out.
actionable.
Let's just imagine that we find out, for argument's sake, that the CPC leadership that Polyev was part of was involved in this. And for whatever reason and however, in whatever manner, he unfairly gained position, say, over Patrick Brown or whoever else, whatever, doesn't matter. My hypothetical question is, or the question is not hypothetical, it's a real question about a hypothetical, is that, does that matter? Is that going to change any numbers? Is that going to make anyone, are we shaking all the fence sitters off one way or the other already? Do you know what I mean?
Well, and there's the other question too of like Poilievre. I genuinely have my doubts that he sought any foreign support because why would he? His campaign was a freight train from the day it started, and so it's hard to see why he would take that sort of risk. I think it's
Me and
important to
Lisa are
remember that
looking
there was
skeptical.
there was
Because he's a
bunch of
greedy
candidates.
monster. And he wants to secure it. Like,
You're
Allegedly.
right, but like as much as that answer would be satisfying, as somebody who has opinions about Pierre Poilievre, I do think it's important to say, like, I have trouble seeing just pragmatically why he would take on that risk.
I mean, I don't think his campaign was as freight trainy as you suggest it was, and that I
You thought
feel
Charest Mania was sweeping the nation.
exactly. Yeah, he's going to come in. But I'm only saying that because I don't know of anybody who has come out favorably with an opinion of him. Even, I think with Trudeau, I think there was much a case of like, no, he's a good guy. He's a little smug, condescending sometimes, but he's a good guy he wants what's best for Canada. I haven't heard I don't think I've heard anybody say he wants what's best for Canada about Poilievre. I don't think that I just haven't, it's like you've said before, where we haven't heard from anybody in Poilievre's past that said he's a good dude. Listen, he's a good dude.
You mean to tell me that in Stratford, Ontario, you haven't heard a lot of vocal support for Pierre Poilievre?
No, I haven't. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
In Saskatchewan, it's loud, man. The Poilievre heads fill his events. Like,
Well, I mean, we have a conservative MP. We have a conservative riding here in Stratford, Perth, Wellington, and yeah, it's conservative because we have this little, island of theater, restaurants, and well-dressed men, and then we're surrounded by agriculture, and so it's largely it's a farming town that's got good restaurants, and a lot of good restaurants. And I think that even when I remember speaking at an event locally, and the conservative MP John Nader was there, nice guy, don't have any problems with him at all. he's asked me to make videos for, some constituent people that he was working with and helping out. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. He's a nice guy. I did a bit, it was around the apple time when I was doing my thing at this event, and he was there, and I pulled out the apple and chewed the apple. And I sort of welcomed him to the event. I said, actually, hang on, you wouldn't understand me when I'm talking like that. And I pulled the apple out of my pocket and I just want to welcome MP John later. How do you like them apples? And everyone just lost it, but not in a way of like, yeah. Everyone's like, yeah, that was stupid, wasn't it? Oh man. And even John was like, yeah.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's like necessarily, that's the thing is I could be convinced that Poilievre's campaign was not a freight train pretty easily.
That's fair. So I found he had a huge amount of unquestioning support, and the persuadable middle just kind of went with who they thought was going to win.
Yeah, like right? In the party, you mean, like memberships.
Yeah, there was a lot of the moderates broke for Charest, and there wasn't as many as Charest expected.
Yeah, and
the persuadable folks see Poilievre look and sound like somebody who could win the prime ministership, and because he kept saying he could, and
still is.
They bought it. Like I genuinely don't think, like, there was some fringe candidates in there, like oh my gosh, what's her name?
Leslie Lewis.
Thank you. I love how you knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
like, who's to say it wasn't her?
Disappointing.
Like, we just don't know. And so it's just hard for me to imagine. And I hate giving Poilievre the benefit of the doubt. Hate it. But it's just hard for me to imagine a path where he would do such a silly thing.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because he has wanted this since he was crawling. And things have led up to this. I mean, they've gone through how many leaders in the last 10 years, right? And so, breaking them down, got rid of that one, breaking it down, got rid of that one. And even though his rise is based on the hatred for the Liberals and Trudeau, I'm not sure that he wouldn't do anything and everything possible to make sure that he was in that seat. Because at the end of the day, you just don't know. I mean, I think Charest was a little bit too liberal for the PCs.
Sure.
And so, but he also has history. So Pierre didn't know. Pierre's just some like donkey yelling in QP like for the last, however many years. So I think somebody with that passion to get the power would consider potentially doing whatever needed to happen to get that seat, right?
Potentially.
I don't know.
I mean,
allegedly.
This is the
allegedly.
problem.
I allegedly concur.
There's so much space for speculation until we get some real answers.
Of course.
But here's the thing, and this is the thing that drives me nuts, is that, we've gone through this. I say this. We've gone through similar experiences with watching Trump rise to power and all that kind of stuff, becoming president in 2016. And then getting turfed out. And we're pretty good judges of character. I feel the three of us are pretty good judges of character. And I think we can probably look at someone like Trump and go, you know what? I've only heard a couple of things, but I don't think he's your dude. I don't think he's the right guy for this job.
Not a fan.
And I know that the three of us would look at Poilievre and go, I don't know if he's a good dude. I don't know if he's the right guy for this job. I'd be, if Aaron O'Toole got elected, I'd be like, he's not my favorite, but okay, I get it. We wanted to switch out of the Liberals. I get it. Whereas this guy, and I think if I met Aaron O'Toole, I'd be like, you've done some terrible social media videos, but apart from like getting your wife to give you a beer and a sandwich after a run and pointing to the porta potty and saying, you found the Prime Minister's office or whatever he said. The seed of a good joke was there, but just never really carried through.
Yeah,
but even if,
despite that stuff, funny.
No, I know, and but I mean, even after that, I'd be like, I would happily meet the guy if he's prime minister. Happily, I'd be like, sure, man, we're not on the same page with a lot of stuff, but that's the way government works.
We'd accept, being. Yeah, right,
yeah.
Well,
Whereas I do not feel that way about Polyev, and it's entirely a judge of character thing. It's not. It's all the little bits of information, all the little tiny red flags, making this huge, angry-looking maple leaf.
So I think
Aw.
a big part of that, because I feel
Angry
in a
maple
lot of
leaf.
ways the same way about him. I think a big part of that's just rooted in how insincere he is. Because you hear again and again that, like, off camera and in caucus rooms, he's a pretty affable guy. And apparently people find him pretty agreeable.
Do they?
Yes, within conservative circles, apparently he is pretty decent. And
Fun?
Are those
that-
underlings that are saying that? Because I don't believe that.
No, it was when I went to Ottawa, I met with a couple of folks who worked on the Hill in different capacities and had sort of not worked directly with Polyev, but worked with Polyev staffers. And I expected them to hate him. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's part of what bothers us about him is that it's a put on. And it's so obviously a put on.
Do you think
Like, yeah, he's probably got his twerpish qualities, but I don't think it's for real.
Because you and I went to that same event, but like a year apart. And then I've told you before about how
Forever's.
talking to you'll get to go one day,
Yeah, whatever.
Lisa. Dave, yeah,
I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
I don't think you'll have to move from Alberta, probably. My experience talking to people at the event was that he was not directly named, but referred to in derogatory terms. And
Like Voldemort?
Yes, exactly. Kind of. Yeah, kind of. Do you
We
think
all know that someone.
do you think that you going a year's difference would have made a difference enough that they would, especially looking at you and what you do you think they would be saying, we're not going to just give this guy info?
Oh, it wasn't the politicians. I think the politicians who are across the aisle can't stand him.
Right.
I think it's like the people who work in his offices and stuff who find him okay. Because
Wow.
I think I think the politicians get frustrated with him because he uses procedural nonsense constantly. Like he's turned committee into theater even, and committee used to actually be where work got done. Now it's where they demand Mark Carney answer questions for reasons that have never really been explained.
Because
We don't like Mark Carney.
Because we think he's going to be the next
We can't yell
leader
at
of the
Trudeau, so we're
Liberals.
going to yell at Mark Carney. We're going to yell at Trudeau in
Just
effigy.
random citizens coming in and question him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Pierre runs a tight ship, so I don't think that people would be able to say whether they love or hate him. I think it's neutral.
Message
I think it's like
discipline is real.
oatmeal, right? I think he's a bowl of oatmeal to them. It's a paycheck. So I don't know. I mean, we've seen in Alberta, we've seen alleged interference in leadership. Never really nailed down, but we know that it happens. I mean, it took 6 rounds to get Danielle where she needed to be for the group. So, I mean, it happens, right? I don't know. And this isn't just, I don't like Pierre because I don't like Pierre, but things are starting to make a little bit of sense if it is true. And man, this is, I think he would kick a puppy to get to where he needs to be. Right. And so,
I do think there is one other angle that we haven't mentioned that's worth pointing out, which is this really kills any notion of having an election anytime in the near future.
Absolutely. 1,000%.
That's the end of that conversation.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody want an election now.
right. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this has
No.
to we got to figure this out before
This
the
is
next
what I mean,
election, right?
It puts the brakes on basically our entire political process federally until we have answers. Because
But again, no
How
one's
would
going to get
anybody-
arrested. Does the public care?
I
mean, I know
think
that-
the
I
public
know that
actually
the-
cares about this one.
yeah.
You think so?
Yeah,
I hope
it's
so.
easy to understand, right? Like the problems of politics aren't always easy to parse.
Mhm.
Foreign government meddling with politics, pretty easy to make sense of.
Pretty easy. Yeah.
The irony, though, is that I mean, the people who fall on that alt-wrong side, right, hate China and hate any. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if there is something that comes out that it was like hand in pocket or whatever. I wonder if that's going to change their mind about their mystical leader, right? Like, I don't know.
I think the hard line aren't going anywhere, but like, I think every party has a segment of sort of persuadable voters. Like, there's a big group of folks in the Conservative Party in their support base who just kind of go where the wind is blowing, right? They vote Conservative because they've always voted Conservative. Their families have always voted Conservative, and they're not wild about what's going on, but it's just sort of what they do. And so I think those are the folks who get shaken loose by this. But I think the other issue that you're going to find, and this is something I'm genuinely really worried about being the after effect of this, those people, when they fall off, don't fall off to the Liberals, the NDP. They fall out. They don't vote anymore.
Right. Because they're disenfranchised.
Right. They lose faith in the process, so why vote?
Yeah.
Like, this undermines our process at so many levels. It's bad.
So this is my question, because understanding no one's, going to be on a firing line. So what happens if it's discovered that the leader of a party partook or had knowledge of partaking, or whose close group of people assisted things? What happens to that leader? They're punted?
It's a career ender, if nothing else.
It's a
Or
career
if
ender.
you,
Yeah,
let's
it's
say, don't
endless
have
ammunition
clearance for
the
anything.
opposition, right?
Okay, but if you don't have security clearance, have you really done anything wrong?
I mean,
yeah.
if
I
they're
think you can.
implicated in what happened in the interference, then boy, did they. But the problem is, because he's avoided getting that clearance, this is exactly what it's for. It's so he can run his mouth free from consequence. He doesn't know because he doesn't want to know. He could go find out today.
Or does he know? That's the other question. Does he know? Can you, do you really need the clearance in order to find out the information? Or is that information still kind of available to you if you want to get it?
But you don't have the consequence of breaching the clearance. That's my whole.
Exactly.
That's my whole thing.
Is I don't know how many people within the Conservative Party would be on the National Security Council. But the other thing I think to bear in mind is, if he does know, that's also a humongous problem, because that's the most privileged information in the country. And so if that's leaving the room, like, the amount of the hoops you have to jump through to get that sort of security clearance is wild. So the idea that somebody would pass along, I have my doubts, just because, like, a lot of people on the Hill are not so much like acutely into protecting secrets. It's more they're acutely aware of consequences, right? The circle of people who know that's pretty small, and so they would find out pretty quick.
Right.
So I have my doubts he knows. My suspicion is he has very strong clues.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if he's calling for the information to be released, I doubt it's him. I doubt it's anybody politically aligned with him.
I doubt he actually thinks it's going to get released.
Yeah, I think he thinks it's a safe bet, and he looks like he's the dude that's saying, "Give me the goods."
Yeah, totally.
I love
it's like the bad guy. It's the bad guy in Scooby Doo saying,
liabilities.
"I wonder who did this. Who's haunting this amusement park? I don't know."
Have you not seen any CSI or true crime?
I've only watched NSICOP.
It's a cup.
It's a new CBC series.
It's a little dry. It's not CBC.
It's just about a bunch of people in suits talking about redacted documents. It's a little slow.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping they find their feet in season 3.
It's going to be a long series.
Exactly. Well, this is, I think, as we said, it's pretty obvious that regardless of whose party someone belongs to, this is one of those things where it's like, we kind of need to find out who these people are and give them the turf.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario, I think, would be, there's I think the absolute worst case scenario would be that there's so many people involved and the tentacles are so far down and into every party, as you said, Steve, it's gonna absolutely destroy people's faith in the system, essentially. And then people drop out. I would really hate
if we had to wipe the whole political slate clean and start fresh. God, that'd be the worst.
I think he's being facetious.
I think so.
Perish the thought.
Pshaw.
Socialist weirdo. Lefty weirdos. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, it's one of those things where I said, when I feel I'm a fairly good judge of character, and my limited knowledge of politics and stuff is that every experience and encounter I've had talking about Polyev has not led me to think that he's actually, you know what? He's been given a bad rap. He's a nice guy. I've never heard that once. I've never had anyone say that to me once.
I don't
Much
think
the
that's
same as
that's
others.
my position. I think it's more that I've heard that he's not outright cruel to those around him. Like, it's not that he's a great guy, it's that he doesn't make coats out of puppies.
Yeah. The
Okay.
bar is low, maybe. Maybe the bar is low.
Yeah, I think
It's interesting.
Although,
And again,
who's to say, really,
I mean, the most-
materials of his coats.
right. We don't know.
the big value in this, of course, is electoral, right? Is the political value in it, because no one's going to jail, no one's going to get arrested as such. They're going to maybe lose their position, maybe, but the biggest damage is going to be caused by, if we find out, it's the conservative leadership that was directly bought and paid for by some foreign government. That's so much ammunition for the Liberals and the NDP. And then conversely, if it's someone in the Liberals, it's just got value to the Conservatives and again, the NDP. But apart from that, like this, it's horrible because it's such a serious thing, but it's also just part of the game, isn't it?
Well, isn't it so interesting that the people in power wrote a bunch of rules around how consequences affect people in power, and they opted no consequences? What a shock.
It's bad
Yeah.
because we need to know, because they need to be dealt with, but it's bad because it's just adding more instability to our
Yes.
political,
Yeah,
right?
it's just throwing gas on all of it.
It's
It
yeah,
is.
regardless
it's rocking
of
this
who.
boat. It's pouring gas in this boat that's already on fire and rocking the boat at the same time.
And our politics was already essentially a Mad Max movie.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was going for more
exactly.
Newfoundland thing to tie it into my recent experiences.
No, it's like a Newfoundland Mad Max movie. It's just like
It's
the
a
dude
Newfoundland
with the flame guitar
Mad-
on the front of a fishing boat.
A schooner or something. I don't know. That kind of thing. I don't know what schooners are. One of them fishing boats.
Little baby boats.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I thought the
exactly.
schooner was like the Blue Nose, or is it?
I think you're right.
In my
I think
world, a
schooners are
schooner is
quite-
an enormous beer.
What?
Anyway.
You called your beard schooner?
In
Is that what you
no,
just
in
said?
Saskatchewan,
Beer.
a large beer, an oversized beer,
Oh.
is a schooner.
I thought you called your beard schooner, and I was like, you named your beard, and then you
No,
shaped
his
it
name
off,
was
you
Mr.
monster.
Beardsworth.
Oh my God, I can't.
What, you don't name stuff?
The ranges we go to.
Yeah, no one's chowing that mane. No one's chowing.
Oh my God.
Absolutely nobody.
That one's never dying.
Well, I guess
never
we'll wait
died.
and find out. And we'll see what happens and what transpires.
Yeah.
I'm sure nothing's happened. It's Sunday, and still nothing's happened the remainder
Nothing's-
of the
we
week
haven't
that
heard
we found
anything.
out. No, exactly. So
Holding pattern from here on out.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll do an emergency podcast if something comes out that's really juicy.
Damn straight.
We have
Um,
technology.
Yeah, the technology, exactly. Owen's like, oh God. Yeah, that sounds great.
Again.
Okay, so let's finish off as we normally do with our improvised theme song. I understand, Steve, you've been to a family event. You obviously have acquired some sort of new instrument /
He's very
superhero
excited.
toy.
You're gonna love this.
Oh no.
So we have trouble keeping rhythm. So I've brought a metronome.
Oh, I like it.
What sort of BPM are we looking for here?
I think like 120, 115.
Done.
Okay. What are you doing, Lisa?
Okay. So I was
What's that?
I was tethering one of my trees because I love it and I don't want it to fall in all this wind. So these are the things that get screwed into the ground with the rope.
I
Anyway,
did not think that's what they were when you
I
pulled them
know.
up.
That's exactly what I thought they were, and nothing else.
You say I never had. It's always ASMR shit. So this we're gonna do.
That's still ASMR.
Well, what is not ASMR? Everything is noise and sound.
Okay, all right. Fine.
I'm not doing
It's
the
an
like.
audio podcast.
I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I'd like to tell you that. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't
Just
make
do
me
that
skewer
creepy
you.
thing they do when they run fingernails across the microphone.
Right?
Yeah.
And you do
Yeah.
the popping, the
Yeah.
things they do. I hate that. Ugh. Okay. Anyway,
Again,
the
Owen's
beat.
like, you know what? I'm not getting paid enough for this. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Podcast is broken. 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 Yeehaw!
Woo!
I don't know why I yeehawed at the end, but
yeah, this wasn't very.
I don't know.
yeehaw song.
It got a country vibe somewhere along the line.
it did. It had sort of a Cotton Eye Joe sort of dance feel to it, you know.
Oh yeah, if it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago.
Well, that's what we heard.
Help me.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. What a podcast. You people are happy you're subscribed, aren't you? Thank you so much for watching and or listening to Podcast is Broken. Again, it's a weekly podcast, and you can sign up at podcastisbroken.ca to get email notifications. You can watch the video there. You can go to your favorite podcast platform and follow us there as well. I didn't check our chart position this week because numbers don't matter to us.
No,
it's
we
not
do it
about
for
the
fun.
numbers.
No,
It's about
we do
the
it for
art.
The people. The people.
The answer
And
is we charted in our hearts.
We charted in our hearts as opposed to sharded in our hearts, which is totally different.
Goodbye.
On that note,
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Take
We'll
care
see you
of
guys
yourselves,
next
folks.
week. Take care. See ya.
Bye.